let me introduce Gene Berry. He is our speaker tonight for the Carson City Mint, and his wife Lori is going to be helping out. So, Gene. Yeah.
Good evening. When Lori and I did this research on this, first one we did, we figured talking standard roundup being about an hour and 15 minutes, so we went through 2 different processes of trimming it down because it had a whole lot of information. So please bear with us just a little bit. I love the Carson City Mint and the information around it. About 3 or 4 years ago, I did a presentation on the Carson City Mint. We went up to the Carson City Museum, and I don't remember the gentleman's name right now. It was Todd, who is the docent up there, was explaining all the different things about the mint, and I wound up gathering a bunch of information and did a previous presentation. Mr. Bob Luna, back on the second table there, asked me if I could put something together into another presentation for you, and that's what I'm here to try. So again, please bear with us just for a minute here. And I need to give credit where credit is due. I did about 15 to 20% of the research. This is really my wife's presentation that I'm helping her with. She did most of the research, spent hours and hours and hours and hours on her computer gathering all this information. So again, this is really her presentation, and I'm going to be doing vocal while she does all the slides and such. Carson City Mint, its place in history. The history of the Carson City Mint is closely intertwined with its location. Nevada silver and gold strikes local and national politics and the precious metal standard of the times. We will begin with an overview of how Carson City was founded and what people and events were there to help bring the mint into fruition. Establishing of the Carson City area. One of the trading posts that was established in 1851 is Nevada's Great Basin was Mormon Station, situated in an area called Carson Valley in present-day Genoa. In 1858, Abraham Curry was looking to purchase land to found a city, but the land price was too expensive, so he traveled north one valley to Eagle Valley. He partnered with 2 attorneys named John J. Mooser and Frank M. Proctor to create a township, as well as to split Nevada out of the Utah Territory to make it a state. They purchased 865 acres from the landowner, which included his ranch and trading post, for $1,000. It was surveyed for a town site, plated and sectioned into parcels. The 10-acre parcel was set aside for the Capitol Plaza. They named the town Carson City after Kit Carson, who explored the area in the 1840s with Colonel John C. Fremont as they charted the Oregon Trail. First gold discoveries. The existence of the nearby Comstock lode was essential to the Carson City Mint's existence. We will provide an overview of the main strikes that led to the discovery of the Comstock lode. In 1849, Abner Blackburn guided a Mormon pack train from Salt Lake City to the gold fields of California. Arriving too early to cross the Sierra Nevada mountains, they stopped in Gold Canyon near the present-day Dayton to rest their animals and wait for the Sierra snow to clear. They joined a group of miners along the trail and were camped there waiting for safe crossing. Abner asked the miners why no one was finding any gold in Nevada. He told them because nobody looked. Abner took a bread pan, a butcher knife, and went down the Gold Canyon to the junction of the Carson River. As he panned in the ravine, he found a small quantity of gold, ran back into camp to show the miners. Everyone dropped what they were doing and ran to the ravine with pans and knives. But all were intent on going to California. So soon they abandoned their efforts and left, but the word was out. The next year, another group of Mormon pioneers stopped in the same area to wait for the Sierra snow to clear. Several members of the group were prospecting the gravel, and John Orr found a gold nugget weighing 19.4 grams. A replica is in the Nevada State Museum. But soon they also had to move on to California while they could. By 1851, over 200 miners were working the gravel of gold canyons. Many California miners, finding no luck in the state, clambered back over the mountains to try their luck here. It was...
Sorry. Okay.
It was ensuing years, many more placer miners settled around the area of Dayton, working their way up Gold Canyon and into the mountains. Soon the miners kept running into sludgy blue-gray mud, which would clog up their sluice boxes. What they didn't know at the time was the blue mud was, in fact, gold and silver-bearing material, and that the area they were working could become one end of the Comstock lode. And this resource would be the main reason for Carson City to get a mint. Silver riches waiting to be found. In early 1856, brothers Allen and Hosea Grosch left the gold fields in California and revisited in areas of Nevada prospecting for silver mines in the Great Basin. They were skilled miners incorporating the newest mining technology from California. They were also experienced metallurgists and knew what they were looking for. At that time, the miners in Nevada were several years behind in their technology, and they were only looking for gold. While prospecting in Gold Canyon in June of 1857, the brothers found several promising veins of silver. They were preparing to take the samples to Sacramento, along with maps in order to file a claim and raise money. Before they could leave, however, Hosea struck his leg with an axe, contracted septicemia, and died from his wound. On September 2nd, Allen took off with ore samples and maps with his friend Richard Maurice Buck and headed for Sacramento. Allen left Henry Comstock to look after his cabin. Unfortunately, Grosch and Buck were stuck in a snowstorm in the mountains. Grosch died from exposure, but Buck recovered and went back to Canada. As soon as Comstock found out about Allen's death in early 1858, he claimed their cabin and land as his own and continued to seek out the diggings of local miners. And upon learning of the strike on Gold Hill with some bluish rock, he immediately filed a claim on a tract directly adjacent to the area. In the spring of 1859, two miners named Peter O'Reilly and Patrick McLaughlin were working around the head of 6 Mile Canyon. In June, they hit pay dirt, but when Comstock learned their find, he confronted the two men, claiming he owned the land that they were working on. Unhappy with his claim on Gold Hill, he threatened to take them to court over their claim. The two miners agreed to split the claim with Comstock, and his friend Manny Penrod. Rush to the Warsaw. In July 1859, a weary miner rode into Grass Valley, California. He had ridden over 150 miles from the Warsaw, Nevada mining camps with some gold-bearing ore. The next day, the local assayer discovered that the gold had a content of $1,000 per ton. Surprisingly, the specimen also contained over $3,000 per ton of silver as well. The miner looked up his friend at camp, Judge James Walsh, and told him of his find. George Hearst, father of William Randolph Hearst, heard about the find and joined the Russian people heading off to Nevada that night. When they arrived in Warsaw, Hearst purchased Patrick McLaughlin's interest of his claim for $3,500. Judge Walsh purchased Penrod's share for $3,000 and Comstock's share in the claim for $11,000. This discovery launched the human stampede over the Sierra Nevada mountains to the new gold strike in Gold Canyon. The Nevada gold and silver will dominate state's history for the next 20 years. Carson City becomes a regional center. At the rush of the Warsaw continued, Carson City became a freight and transportation center for the region. In 1861, the Nevada Territory was formed out of the former Utah Territory, and by the time over 200 miners and refining facilities were operating there. The Civil War had begun and the United States government needed the resources coming from the northern mines to finance the war. In 1862, Treasury Secretary Solomon Chase urged Congress to consider an assay office or branch mint near the Comstock, and other politicians worked to that end. Congress knew the value of making the territory a state, and on October 31st, 1864, Nevada became the 36th state in the Union. Carson City was confirmed as the state capital. The Comstock mines provided Carson City with most of its commercial importance during this time, because in addition to producing huge amounts of gold and silver, the mines made the city a regional transportation center. The birth of the Carson City Mint. Because of the expense of shipping its bullion and with the increasing output in the regional mines, the mine owners petitioned Congress to build a branch mint in Nevada. On June 2, 1862, Treasury Secretary Solomon B. Chase deferred to Mint Director James Pollock, who spoke against establishing it because he opposed all branch mints. Thankfully, he was ignored, and the House Ways and Means Committee argued in favor of establishing it. The Nevada Mint bill passed through both House and Senate in a single day, March 3, 1863. Carson City was selected to host the new federal mint because of its proximity to the mining region. The Civil War had imposed some delays, but a lot was purchased in February 1865. Abraham Curry was appointed as the first superintendent of the U.S. Mint in Carson City, building and outfitting the mint. In late 1865, Treasury Secretary Hugh McCulloch established the Carson City Mint Commission. In early 1866, McCulloch appointed Alfred B. Mullet, a 32-year-old native of England, as supervising architect for the Carson City Mint. McCulloch selected Abraham Curry to be one of the Mint commissioners, and Curry also won the job of building contractor for the Mint. On July 17, 1866, Abraham Curry received the plans, specifications, and authorization papers for building the Mint from Washington. Groundbreaking ceremonies took place on July 18, 1866, and the cornerstone was laid on September 18th. By the winter of 1866 and 67, only the footing extended 7 feet below the basement floor had been laid. When work resumed in the spring of 1867, it proceeded quickly and the roof was on by December. However, finances were running out for the project, and Curry had to leave for Washington on December 5th to beg for more funding for the building and machinery. Because he had gone through the original $150,000. He was successful in getting more money, but this would not be the last time Curry had to go begging for more money because costs were exceeded. By the time construction was complete and the mint was finished, it ended up costing more than $425,000, exceeding the original budget by over 200%. The interior cabinet work was complete by the summer of 68, excuse me. The mint's machinery had to come from Philadelphia by steamship and rail from Philadelphia to San Francisco, California, when the equipment would be loaded onto freight wagons and travel the California Trail over the Sierra Mountains to Carson City. Because we had to shorten this, I wanted to add something. Most of the machinery came through the Panama Isthmus by freight wagon.
No, rail at this time.
Excuse me, by freight rail.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of good detail in the story of that being moved through there. But again, I want to keep to the script. And I just thought everybody'd like to know it didn't come straight from Philadelphia because of cost. It went through the Panama.
No transcontinental railroad at the time.
Oh, most of the equipment traveled would not arrive until November 23rd, 1868. The equipment arrived unassembled, so mint employees had to assemble everything when it arrived. Machinery tests were conducted through 1869, and when all was ready, the coin dies still had not arrived from the Philadelphia Mint by December. When they did arrive, Abe Curry had to point out that they were dated 1869, and they would no longer be of value. They should have been dated 1870, so the mint had to wait for new dies to arrive. They arrived by Wells Fargo Express Company on January 10th, 1870. Carson City's Mint's early years on February 11th, 1870. Coin press number 1 produced the seeded Liberty silver dollars, the first coins to display the iconic Carson City Mint mark. Carson City Mint coins can be identified by their CC mark on the obverse of the coin. 3 days later, the mint coined $10 gold eagles. Half eagles, or $5, were struck at the mint on March 1st, and the first double eagles, $20 gold pieces, were struck March 10th. The silver coinage continued with the $half on April 9th and the $quarter on April 20th. In 1870, the total number of coins produced was about 92,000 coins. In 1873, the new trade dollar was authorized as a coin to be used almost exclusively for export. In 1873, the first year it was coining, Carson City Mint struck 12,500 trade dollars. That year, the mint only produced a total of 2,300 seeded Liberty dollars because time and resources were diverted to produce the trade dollar, which had a substantially higher mintage of 124,500 pieces. The mint also produced less of the other coins as well, because Carson City still only had one coin press. Another event of note at the Mint in 1870 is the 1873 dimes, quarters, and half dollars were produced both with and without arrows. During its first few years of operation, the Mint did not produce a significant number of coins. One cause of this was the fact that the mine owners were suspicious and did not want to take their bullion there because Mint superintendent was Abraham Curry, a fellow Virginia City mine owner. The thought of having Curry benefit from their metals was displeasing. The crime of 73. In an effort to reform and consolidate the coinage system, Congress enacted the Coinage Act of 1873. The Comstock load had had created a glut of silver on the market, and the government was looking to standardize the weight of coins in grams in an attempt to introduce the metric system into the nation's coinage. On February 12, 1873, President Grant signed the Mint Act of 1873 into law. With this action, the value of silver was lowered to omit the silver dollar from the currency and to abolish the right of silver bullion holders to have their metal struck into legal tender coinage, thus putting the nation on the gold standard. A trade dollar was also established. It weighed 420 grains, more than the 412.5 grains that the standard silver dollar. Other coins eliminated by the act were the 2-cent piece, the silver 3-cent piece, 3-cent coin, and the silver half dime. These were replaced by the nickel 3-cent coin and the 5-nickel 5-cent coin. The act led to shortages in small change in the West, and the trade dollar, originally intended for the Far East trade, failed to gain full acceptance there, and many were returned or never left the United States. By the time the act took effect, the Mint had already produced significant numbers of coins at the old weights. Officials declined to decided to place the distinctive arrows alongside the date to signify the new weighted coins. The Mint had used the same device in 1853 to denote a slight reduction in weight. This time the arrows appeared for only 2 years and were dropped without comment at the end of 1874. The act immediately depressed silver prices, which enraged the Western mining interest and reduced domestic money supply. In September of 1873, a major bank failed, setting off the chain of bank failures and the closing of the New York Stock Exchange. This led to continued business failures, leading to the long depression. Continued Carson City Mint activity. Coin production did not edge up at the Carson City Mint until 1874, when production exceeded 1 million coins. The same year, the Mint received another Morgan and Orr coin press. Also the year James Crawford started as superintendent of the Carson City Mint and served in the position until his death in 1885. In 1875, the Mint started producing the 20-cent piece with a mintage of 133,290. In 1876, only 10,000 were produced. Those were the only 2 years those coins were produced. Total production of coins peaked in 1876 with a total of almost 16 million. The Bland-Allison Act of 1878. The resolution of the crime of 73 was the Bland-Allison Act of 1878, which was signed into law on February 28, 1878. Congressman Richard Bland, aka Silver Dick, was an associate of Free Silver and worked to get the bill passed. Under the act, the U.S. Treasury was required to purchase between 2 and 4 million worth of silver each month from the Western mines. It was to be purchased at market rate, not at the predetermined ratio paid to the value of gold. And it reinstated the dollar as legal tender and required the silver purchased by the Treasury to be minted into silver dollars. The act helped to return the U.S. to bimetallism, and it's birthed the Morgan silver dollar. It also allowed people to deposit silver coin into the Treasury in exchange for silver certificates worth not less than $10. Mint activities after the Bland-Allison Act of 1878. In 1878, the Mint had 3 coin presses, all produced by Morgan and Orr. Number 1, the largest struck silver dollars, trade dollars, and the $20 gold double eagle. There was also a medium-sized press and a smaller press. The smallest press was retired that year and sat unused in the Mint until its closure. Also in 1878, coin press number 1 malfunctioned and suffered a severe crack in the side of its frame. Rather than take the time and expense to send it back to Philadelphia for repairs, it was repaired at the Virginia Truckee Railroad machine shop and sent back into service. In 1878, considerably fewer dimes, quarters, trade dollars, and gold double eagles were produced compared to 1877. Also, 1878 was the first year of production for the Morgan silver dollar, with 2,212,000 produced that year. The Morgan silver dollar was one of the most popular coins struck at the Carson City Mint. They were only minted in Carson City from 1878 to 1893, with only 13 coins in the series. In November of 1884, the Carson City Mint faced another threat to its existence when Grover Cleveland was elected president. Cleveland was the first Democrat elected in the Mint's existence, and all of the current Mint officers were faithful Republicans. The Mint was indeed closed on September 11, 1885, and let all of its employees go. The Mint reopened more than a year later, but only as an assay office. When Republican Benjamin Harrison was elected in 1888, the Mint staff of the Democratic political appointees were replaced with Republican ones. And when the new fiscal year began on July 1st, 1889, the Mint received the necessary funding to resume coining operations. Striking the coins did not resume until September 9th because the machinery needed attention after years of idleness. The Sherman Silver Purchase Act during 1889, the falling price of silver made Western mining interests desperate for subsidies. While Eastern banks wanted more paper currency, Senator John Sherman introduced this legislation requiring the Treasury to purchase nearly twice as much silver as before, adding more money into circulation. This act succeeded the Bland Allison Act and required the government to buy at least 4.5 million ounces of silver per month to coin a minimum of 2 million silver dollars a month by the first year. Mint operations wind down. A study of mint operations in 1891 found that the average cost of minting coins at the Carson City Mint was more than twice the cost at the other 3 mints. But the Mint continued coining operations until the spring of 1893. The Nevada mines had been seeing steadily falling production, and the price of silver bullion continued to seriously decline worldwide. There were also suspicions of theft and corruption at the Mint. On top of this, the Treasury vaults were overflowing with silver dollars, and the government's gold supply was running out because of all the silver they were buying instead of gold. By the end of 1893, the panic hit Wall Street, and over 15,000 businesses and 500 banks collapsed, with run on the banks happening across the country. On June 1st, 1893, acting Mint Director Robert E. Preston ordered coining operations to cease, but the Mint would continue to function as an assay office. The Mint was dealt its death blow in 1895 when it was proven that several employees, in conjunction with a number of prominent community members, were systematically pilfering bullion from the Mint. The facility was closed on April 18th, and the Superintendent Jewett W. Adams was made to open an embezzlement account to replace the losses. The Mint had reopened in June of 1896, however, its activities were limited to refining of bullion into ingots. In 1899, a bill passed Congress officially naming the facility a federal assay office. In August, a train took about 22 tons of remaining Carson City silver dollars away from the Mint, and all the coining equipment was disassembled and shipped to other facilities. The Carson City Mint continued to refine raw gold and silver from Nevada and neighboring states' mines until 1933 because of the Depression. It failed to receive the appropriations for a new fiscal year and its doors were closed. The building remained unoccupied until 1941, where it was selected to become the site of the Nevada State Museum. Overview of Carson City coinage. The Carson City Mint produced most of the silver and gold coinage denominations authorized by law during the years of its coining operations, 1870 to 1893. Silver dimes, quarters, quarter dollars, and half dollars were struck every year from 1870 through 1878, inclusive, with the exceptions of no dimes were struck in 1870, no quarters were struck in 1874, no silver dollars were struck in 1874 to 1877, and 1886 to 1888. Trade dollars were only minted from 1873 to 1878. 20-cent pieces were only minted from 1875 to 1876. No gold half eagles or eagles were minted from 1885 to 1889. No gold double eagles were minted from 1880 to 1881 and 1886 to 1888. What makes Carson City Mint coins more valuable? Carson City coins are generally more collectible than other mints because there were few short years of operation, lower mintages, and very rare coins that have survived. The mint only had one coin press for the first 5 years of operation. Another contributor was the scarcity of the Carson City coins is the crime of 73, where the Treasury Department changed the weight of silver coins, increasing it slightly. This resulted in modified with arrows designs on the dime, quarters, and half dollars. The arrows were added on either side of the date of the minor coinage of 1873 and 1874 to signify the change in weight. It also caused the melting of millions of lighter weight silver coins at all the mints that were struck prior to March of 1873. April of 1873 saw the melting of surviving quantities of Carson City dime, quarters, and half dollars from 1870 to 1873. A factor affecting the value of the Morgan silver dollars and Carson City Mint Morgans in particular was the passage of the Pittman Act in 1918. More than $500 million Morgan silver dollars were struck between 1878 and 1904 at all of the U.S. mint facilities. When the silver reserve was finally depleted in 1904, the Carson City Mint had ceased to strike the Morgan dollar. The U.S. Treasury vaults were full to the brim with Morgan silver dollars from the beginning of World War II, when there was a run on British silver because of German propaganda. Senator Key Pittman of Nevada sponsored the act. It authorized the conversion of 350 million standard silver dollars into bullion to help pay for the war and to conserve the gold supply. This resulted in the melting of over 270 million Morgan dollars for the sale of bullion overseas to buy bullion at above market rates from the mining companies. The GSA hoard. The boom of Carson City coin collectors came about in the early 1960s. For generations, silver dollars were stored in Treasury and Federal Reserve vaults to back up the written obligations attached to the silver certificate paper money. Before 1935, silver certificates can be redeemed in silver. It no longer had to be in dollars. After June 24th, 1968, silver certificates could no longer be redeemed in silver, although they remain legal tender. In November 1962, during the annual distribution, it was discovered that there was some more rare and valuable dates still sealed in their original mint bags, all in uncirculated condition. Collectors and the coin dealers lined up to purchase them in $1,000 bags, trading silver certificates for the coins. In March of '64, the Treasury, after having discovered many scarce bags of Carson City dollars, stopped redeeming silver certificates with silver dollars and offered bags of silver granules in their place. They looked again and found approximately 3,000 bags containing 3 million coins. Many of them were Carson City Morgans, which were a premium. These coins were were turned over to the General Service Administration for sorting, marketing, and disposal to bring profit to the government. They dispersed them in a series of sales from 1973 to 1980 via auctions and fixed prices. They came sealed in a rigid plastic holder and boxed with an original numbered certificate and a message from then President Richard Nixon. These account for most of the mint state C.C. Morgans we know of today, the last Carson City dollar. There exists an over mint mark coin that clearly shows the O mint mark of the New Orleans Mint superimposed over the CC mint mark, and more than one die exists with this O over CC over mint mark. There have been at least 6 die marriages found with variants. The Philadelphia Mint, which is responsible for sending out the coin dies used at all the U.S. mints, made a little mistake in 1900. Carson City was officially decommissioned as a U.S. mint facility in 1899, and they sent the dies they had on hand back to Philadelphia. 2 theories exist about how this could have happened. A mint employee could have mistakenly punched a CC into the die and had to hastily fix his mistake. The other theory, the one I believe happened, is that the Philadelphia Mint was repurposing reverse dies it had received from the Carson City Mint and punched an O over the existing CC for use at the New Orleans Mint. The mint lives on in Carson City. In 1942, the Carson City Mint facility became the Nevada State Museum, and it still operates as a museum today. The museum also had a collection of Carson City Mint coins, including 109 of the 111 coins produced. It was donated to the Mint by Wells Fargo on December 8, 1999 to replace the coins that were stolen in a museum theft on August 4, 1952. Also displayed were many relics from the Mint's heyday, and on the bottom floor they have a reconstruction of a gold mine and a stamp mill. The museum is also a showplace for the Carson City Coin Press No. 1, which has been refurbished and operates with to this day, coining commemorative medals. You can purchase a planchet at the museum store and have it coined on the No. 1 coin press right in front of you. Coin press No. 1 after Carson City Mint closure. After the coin press was removed from the shuttered mint, it was sent to the Philadelphia Mint. In 1930, it was converted from steam power to electricity. In 1950, it was moved from the San Francisco Mint and renumbered No. 5 to fit their place in their coinage department. In 1955, when all coinage was temporarily halted, the old No. 1 press was scheduled to be scrapped. But the Nevada State Museum purchased it instead. They received the press in non-working condition, and the museum refurbished it into working condition. During the Kennedy administration, a nationwide coin shortage developed, and U.S. Mint Director Eva Adams, a Nevada native, knew the #1 coin press was housed at the Nevada Museum and reached out to them for a loan of the still workable press. It was shipped to the Denver Mint, where it spent 4 years striking 118 million coins, including 50 million Lincoln pennies. By 1975, the shortage was alleviated, and the Mint press was sent back to the museum. Last year, Nevada celebrated the sesquicentennial of the Carson City Mint, and the #1 press produced commemorative silver medallions to celebrate the opening. Carson City coin dies discovery. During building renovations in 1999, they were conducted at the parking lot adjacent to the Nevada Museum. Some old tools and rusty trash were discovered while contractors were excavating with a backhoe. The contractor, Dennis Cassinelli, who was also an amateur archaeologist, recognized that some of the items looked like old coin dies. Dr. Jean Hattori, Nevada State Museum curator of anthropology, removed over 30 of the dies from the site. Many more dies were looted from the trench when word got out, and so do appear occasionally at auctions. In 2001, a seller was trying to sell a set of dies on eBay, but was caught by the FBI and returned them. It is legal to own canceled coin dies. It is not legal to steal them. And it turned out that although all mints are required to send their retired dies back to Philadelphia for disposal, Carson City and Denver had received approval to bury their expired dies. They just had to chisel a large mark or an X to indicate that the die was no longer to be used. And one of the dies Cassinelli discovered was for an 1875 20-cent coin that had been cracked before being used in the coin press at the Mint. A coin collector has found that he had one of the 20-cent coins that had been produced with this cracked die. The museum created a special exhibit showing both the original cracked coin die and one of the 20-cent pieces that shows the crack from the die. A new Carson City Mint Morgan dollar, a new Carson City Morgan silver dollar. Morgan dollar. To mark the centennial in 2021 of the transition of production of the transition of production from the Morgan dollar to the Peace dollar series. The U.S. Mint will strike a minimum of 6 different coins, combining of the 2 designs at 3 different production facilities. The San Francisco and Denver mints will bear their respective mint marks of the S and the D. The Philadelphia will have no mint mark, as was the case in 1971 Morgan dollar. And the Philadelphia Mint will also strike 2 additional Morgan dollars exhibiting privy marks to pay homage to the output of the series of the branch mints in Carson City and New Orleans. The Philadelphia Mint will also strike without mint mark a 2021 Peace dollar. The dollars will be composed of 0.858 troy ounces of 999 fine silver. The first 2 coins, one with the Carson City privy mark and one with the New Orleans privy mark, have already been put online for sale on May 24th, 2021. And the demand was so great that the U.S. Mint server crashed. And it was very difficult for people to pre-order these coins. The next 2 coins, one with the San Francisco Mint mark and one with the Denver Mint mark, should go on sale Tuesday, August 3rd at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time at the Mint's website, usmint.gov. And the Philadelphia Morgan and the Peace dollar will go on sale on Tuesday, August 10th at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. In conclusion, everybody says, thank God. Sorry. The history of the Carson City Mint is short but very interesting, and there are so many stories to tell and so much information to tell about the mint. But that would take hours. In short, mint operations fluctuated with the silver production of the Comstock and other Nevada mines, as well as due to the outside events and political power plays. It is also closely tied to the development of the Western Territory, including the location of the California Trail and its connection to the wild days of Virginia City. But most of all, the coins themselves represent a rich history and reflect the rarity of the short days of the Carson City Mint. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Any questions for Jane?
I have one, way back at the beginning, why were the miners going to Sacramento to file the deed? Instead of, was there no place to file in Nevada?
Well, I don't, sorry.
Okay.
Mr. Trini.
The reality is that miners, specifically the major mines, preferred San Francisco because William Ralston, who was then president of the Bank of California, had an inside thing with an organization called the San Francisco Refining. So he was cutting a deal, a rebate. So they took the Virginia and Truckee Railroad, got to the Central Pacific, took it, and this was undercutting whatever it is in Carson City. Eventually, William Ralston died, and things changed, but they were cutting a deal. In fact, the whole mint is nothing but deals left and right when you study it. And one of the things to distinguish Mr. Berry should have mentioned is Abe Curry actually paid out of his pocket construction costs and had to beg the U.S. government later to reimburse them.
We have tons more information.
I'm sorry.
But to keep it close to a half an hour, a lot of information, at least 2 more of these was cut.
Good job.
Very good.
Thank you very much, Jane. Thank you, Lori.
I read Lori did a bunch of research. She deserves most of it.